He thought he had it, and something happened.
So you go back for a second term, and there must have been, by then, a strain within the party. Reagan hadn't announced, but clearly there was talk about a Reagan campaign. I mean, what was going on within the Kansas Republican Party in '75, early '76?
They were hoping Reagan would get in the race. I mean, for some reason Ford wasn't a clear favorite, didn't light a fire under very many people. But I signed on, I don't know when, to go around the country and go to Missouri and Kansas and other states, talk to delegates. I think Bob Griffin was with me, and so we got into it fairly early, and I don't know how many states we did, but I think Ford appreciated that.
Tell us about Gerald Ford. I mean, you knew him uniquely. I mean, what?
Yeah, well, I remember somebody who you personally or fairly quickly had a relationship with. You liked him. He's a good guy, decent guy. Wasn't one of these hot shots, big shots, kind of lorded over you as a freshman congressman. And not that I had all that much contact with him in the first couple of years, but so you sort of pick out people and whatever you do in life and say, well, I kind of like what that person's doing. Maybe keep an eye on him or her. So I kind of like what Ford was doing. And he was so smart when it came to defense matters, because he was ranking Republican on Defense Appropriations Subcommittee. And he knew this stuff backwards and forward. Plus, he had this great camaraderie on the other side of the aisle. People like Jerry Ford. And so then when he decided to run against Halleck, three of us from Kansas decided would vote for Ford. And what did he win, by 3 votes?
That was 1965, right after the Goldwater debacle.
Yes. Yeah, that was another great. So, and Ford, of course, I think appreciated that. I mean, we couldn't do a lot for you because we were in the minority, but I don't know. I just thought he was as I've said many times, a good, decent person that you'd like to have as your neighbor and sit down and talk with.
Do you think there's a little bit of the Midwesterner too? I mean, that there is a distinct kind of Midwestern value system. And,
I think so. Even though he was upper Midwest, but, yes. But he was pure enough. But
do you think he took a bum rap on that whole question of intelligence?
On the what?
The whole issue of intelligence.
Oh.
Do you think he took a bum rap?
No question about it. In fact, I remember we went out and made speeches about how he's number 3 at Yale or whatever it was, and All-American football player and all these things he had done. Yeah, the old line, he couldn't walk and chew gum at the same time, and he fell a time or two once getting off the plane, right? Slipped.
Yeah.
So that all played into. But when you listen to him on the Senate floor explain some complicated defense appropriation bill, I mean, not that many people had a chance to do that, but you understood pretty quickly this guy he not only knew what time it was, he knew how the clock was made.
Don't you think there's a bias that, first of all, people think because Midwesterners speak slowly, that they think slowly, and secondly, if you're not facile or, quote, eloquent, even if you buy the eloquence, that's how opinion makers.
But he was a Yale. I mean, you talk about, he was one of the from the right school, but and I don't, as I remember in the House, I don't remember any press people jumping on Gerald Ford. It's only when you get up the ladder ways, when you're in the minority, even though you may be the Republican leader, well, you're not going to cause much harm and create many waves. But they had the Evan Jerry show for a while, that.
Oh, yeah, Evan Jerry?
It used to be Evan Charlie, then Evan Jerry. Just try to get a little press. Republicans, just to get your name in the paper, the party's name is almost had to buy an ad. So they would have these little, I think it was on a Saturday, or Friday, not Saturday. Or maybe it's during the week, because Friday would not be a good day to get any press. But, and I knew other people from Michigan, Cedarburg and Griffin and others who were close to Ford, and they were all good guys. And they all thought a lot of him, so. Was he the dean of the Michigan delegation?
I think he probably was.
Oh, either here or Cedarburg.
Yeah. The vice presidency. Now, you saw Nelson Rockefeller, who was a pretty unhappy vice president. Did you? Were you there? Remember, there was this famous incident where I think he was called to task, maybe by Senator Byrd. He was for some ruling about it had something to do with the cloture. And eventually, actually, they reduced the cloture from 2/3 to 60. But somehow Rockefeller tried to involve himself in the debate on the floor or something, and or didn't recognize someone. I think maybe Jim Allen from Alabama was involved.
Yeah, I do remember.
Did you have any contact with him when he was vice president?
Oh, he used to go up and say hello when he was presiding, or go in the back little room there and say hello. And I remember once he invited me out to his house for breakfast. I remember, I think 2 or 3 of us, sort of junior members.
Was that the place out on Foxhall Road?
Yeah. I can't remember what we talked about, but I can't remember what we had for breakfast. But
well, I'd be impressed if you did.
Yeah, it's probably pretty good stuff. Eggs Rockefeller.
Did he was not happy as vice president?
No.
That was no secret.
Yeah, but I don't think he was happy about being kicked out either.
Yeah.
He obviously wanted to be president of the United States, and as I've said, if he'd have done that finger thing earlier, it might have been president.
No, that's right. You were. What's that? In fact, that's a perfect on which to end today. You tell us about that.
Or was that Binghamton?
Yeah, it was Binghamton, New York, in the '76 campaign. You were running for vice president, and he was.
Well, we were up there, and Elizabeth and I were there. We remember being on the plane with him. I remember talking to Joe Canzeri, who was sort of his right-hand guy, a nice guy, and Nelson, he really wanted to help me. He may have been very bitter about the whole thing, but he didn't hold it against me. And I remember him telling me, never read today's papers. So if you read today's papers, you'll spend all day reacting. Let somebody else read the papers, and there's something really important. So read today's papers tomorrow. Or that made a lot of sense, because politicians have a habit of picking up the paper, and if they see something, go out and pound somebody or put a bill in or whatever, without much thought. But in Binghamton, I think he was just getting kind of warmed up and saying a few words and was going to introduce me. And there's some hecklers, people I don't remember even what they were saying anymore. And then that's when he gave the famous sign.
One finger salute?
Yeah. I think he said something, too. What would he say? Anyway, he got the message, and he got a lot of applause.